Hello and welcome. This is coverage of your materials from the book Real Estate Law for Paralegals, Chapter 1, an Introduction to Real Property Law. This is Part 1. We're going to learn about property and what is property. So what is property? Well, a simple way to think about it is that property is everything that's subject to ownership. So if you can own something, then it is property. So these are things like your car, right? Your car is property. You can do with it what you want. For example, if you want to race your car, then you can race your car. If you want to put it in a garage and uh, show it off and let people admire it, you can do that as well. It's your car. If you want to drive at 150 miles an hour down the street, smash it into a light pole, you could do that as well. It's your car and your property, and you can do with it what you want. Right? Your house is property, right? You can own your house. You can do the things you want with your house. For example, you can throw pool parties all night long. That's what you want to do with your house. You could rent out to a television show where people compete for affection on TV. Or you could lock yourself away inside and never let anyone in again. It's your house, your property. You own it. You can do what you want. Jewelry, that's property. You could show it off to your friends and make them jealous. You could lock it away in a safe and never take it out again. You could head to Vegas and pawn it for gambling money. It's your ring. You can do with it what you want. Pets. Our pets are property. I know sometimes they feel like family. These two ladies think this dog is their long lost sister, but in fact, pets are property. You can make them look like a lion. You could dress them in cute little clothes. They're your property. You own them, and you can do what you want. So do all these different types of property have in common? Well, the fact that you can do what you want. They're yours. So property, while it's about things that can be owned, it's about the rights that we have in those things that we own. And so when we think about property, think about the rights that you have in those items, not necessarily the items themselves, but the rights you have in them. So now we're going to try to characterize property. So we have two types of property. We have tangible and intangible. Tangible property is property that can be held or touched. This is your jewelry, your car, your home. Right? You can go inside the house. You can drive the car. You can put the ring on your finger. You can hold these things. You can touch these things. These are tangible. And then we have intangible property. So intangible property doesn't really have a physical presence, but it's represented by something that has a physical presence, like a certificate or some other type of instrument. This is something like a stock certificate, right? The paper itself isn't worth anything of value, right? But it represents something of value. And that value is the ownership interest in the business, right? Your share of that corporation or company, right? So the paper doesn't mean anything. It's just showing that it's your physical representation of that intangible ownership. Same thing with the patent, right? The paper doesn't represent anything of value, but the diagram and the idea, the design behind the engine um, is the thing of value. You just have to represent it somehow, and that is the patent. You know, that the physical pieces of paper represent the idea, and that's really what has the value is the idea. You can't touch an idea, but you can touch the paper that represents the idea. So that's tangible and intangible. Next we have real and personal property. So real property encompasses the land and all of the property that's permanently attached to it, right? So when you own your home, you own all of the real estate, right? So you own the house itself, but you also own the fence, right? Because it's permanently attached to the land. So you get the fence when you buy that house. Driveway, right? The driveway comes with the house. It's permanently attached to the real estate. Other structures, barns, garages, windmills, those are all physical structures that are permanently attached to the land itself, and so they're part of the real property. Then we have personal property. Now, personal property is pretty much everything else that's not real property, right? So your car, your jewelry, that's personal property. Your chair, your lawnmower, your flat screen TV is all personal property. Everything that's not real property is personal property. So then we have this thing called fixtures, and it's sort of like a hybrid or a combination of personal property and real property. So fixture, they're things that are personal property but have become permanently attached to the real estate, so they become part of the real property. These are things like your bathtub, chandelier, or built-in barbecue pit. So we identify fixtures by looking at a couple of things, right? So we look at the method of attachment, we look at the adaptation, we look at the intent of the parties, and we also look to see if there's any agreements. So the method of attachment, right? We want to see how permanent the item is attached to the real estate. So for example, we're looking at this refrigerator. Is it just plugged in and rolled up against the wall? Is it going to do any damage if we remove it? And compare that to this built-in Sub-Zero refrigerator that's actually part of the kitchen. Can you just take out that refrigerator, or is it going to do some damage? How permanent is the item attached to the real estate itself? Then we look at the adaptation, right? So this above ground pool, this personal property is just sitting on the dirt, right? You can move this out of the yard if need be. But what if it has a wooden deck built around it? Now it's been adapted to the real estate. So if you took out this pool now, then you have this kind of weird deck just sitting out in the middle of the yard, right? So it's probably going to be a fixture because of the way you've adapted uh, the use to the home with the deck and the pool and everything. Next is the intent of the person who attached the item to the real estate, right? Did they intend for it to be part of the real estate and never to be taken apart or removed? Or did they intend for it to remain personal property and movable? And last, we look to see if there's any agreements between parties like buyer and seller or landlord and tenant, whether or not something is supposed to be a fixture or if it's to remain personal property. So if you look at all four of those things together, that's how you determine if something is a fixture or not. All right, so some things to take away. You need to know what property is, that it's everything subject to ownership. and that it really consists of the rights that a person has in those items that are owned. You need to know the different characteristics of property, tangible and intangible, as well as real and personal. And you also need to know what a fixture is and identify the test to determine a fixture. Stay tuned for more of Chapter 1.